if you look at thyroid symptoms and you look at adrenal symptoms or symptoms from high stress, they're very similar. Hair loss, fatigue, loss of energy, weight gain, decreased sex drive or libido, all of those things are very similar. So how do you distinguish between thyroid and adrenal symptoms? Hi, I'm Dr. Richard L. Robles. In this video I'm going to talk to you about another one of the deal breakers to getting rid of your thyroid symptoms. Again, if you take your lab tests and your doctor tells you that your thyroid is functioning normally, you're on the right dosage for your medication, but you're still suffering with symptoms like hair loss, fatigue, weight gain on a low-calorie diet, headaches that start in the morning and wear off as the day goes on, whatever those symptoms may be related to your thyroid, then you need to pay attention to these deal breakers because they'll help you get rid of the symptoms that you're not able to with medication if it's not working for you. Alright? And the majority of patients find that they do take the medicine and they still have some type of symptoms. That's where this other information comes in, because it can really help you get out of that funk of thyroid symptoms that just don't go away. So this deal breaker is adrenal health. Now, your adrenal glands are there to help you respond to stress. This stress can be emotional stress, physical stress, dietary stress, stress on your immune system from infections, or even like low-grade infections that don't cause overt symptoms, dysbiosis in the gut, and a number of other things. Now, your adrenal glands, there's a couple of markers that we can look at in your lab tests that will help you identify these problems. Now, again, when we look at your lab tests, you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration that your doctors are looking for pathology. They're evaluating these markers to see if there's disease present. What we're looking for is, we're looking at a tighter window that determines whether or not your body's functioning well. You have a lot of dysfunction that occurs before disease happens. It's because when you accumulate stress, it affects your body as it wears it down over time, and then eventually your body can no longer adapt to that stress, and then a disease presents itself to really get your attention to make the steps and make the changes necessary to allow your body to function well. So what do we look for? So what we want to look at on like a standard blood test are going to be some of your electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, CO2, and these things will give us a better idea of what's going on with one of the roles of the adrenals, which is management of electrolytes in the body. This also helps with pH management in the body. So the outer part of your adrenal gland, the cortex, makes three hormones. One of those is called aldosterone, and aldosterone regulates electrolytes in the body. Now, when we start to see fluctuations in your sodium, potassium, or your chloride, then we start to suspect that there's a heightened stress response that's been going on long enough that now adrenal function has started to decrease. And some of this happens because of stress on the brain, and some of it happens because of stress on the actual glands. So what are we looking for? Your sodium should be between 135 and 140. If it's outside of this range, either high or low, then we would have concerns about some type of chronic stress that's impacting the way that your adrenals are functioning in your body, and that they're not regulating your electrolytes as efficiently as they can. Of course, there are other things that can be like water softeners or high salt intake, which can sometimes have an impact on the body. But if you know that you're within normal limits on those things as far as like salt intake, and you're using good sea salts, then typically that's not really going to be the issue. The first thing we want to look for is problems with your body's ability to manage stress or the impact that it's having on your adrenal glands. The next would be potassium. This should be between about 4 to 4.5. If it's outside of this range, again, we want to put that in the back of our brain as, okay, well, now we see two electrolytes that are off. Then we start to think, okay, this is more adrenal than just being a problem with sodium or potassium. The next one is chloride. Chloride should be between 100 to 106. Again, if it's outside of those ranges, then we start to be, concerned about adrenal health. When you see all three of those markers, the sodium, the potassium, the chloride, start to shift, then you're starting to look at a global electrolyte imbalance, and that's when you start to really think, okay, this might be adrenal related. So you don't always want to look at just one marker and rest your hat on that. You want to look at the bigger picture of what's going on in the body. That's the reason we look at other electrolytes like calcium. Calcium should be between 9.2 and 10.1. If it's outside of those ranges, again, that could have to do with vitamin D usage, but it also can have an impact with the way that the body's regulating and managing electrolytes. The last one is CO2. If your CO2 is between 25 and 30, that's where we want to see it. If it's outside of that range, then we know that there's something that's affecting the way that your body's managing pH. So this brings us to another component of really recognizing adrenal problems in the body. So your adrenal glands regulate epinephrine or adrenaline response and norepinephrine or noradrenal responses in the body. These things help you manage stress and adapt to stress. Now, what happens is that when our stress response is kicked up, our body goes into a fight or flight response, which affects a part of your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, called the sympathetic nervous system. So that's your fight or flight response. You also have this rest and digest response, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. Now there's a balance between these two things. When you're resting and digesting, you can't be running away from something. They're kind of in opposition to each other. So when you have high stress, no matter what the stressor is that's causing it, what happens is that your body's not in that rest and digest state, it's in that fight or flight response. And so pH production in your stomach tends to be impacted negatively, meaning that you don't produce enough stomach acid to really keep that pH in your stomach really low and acidic, like it's supposed to be. When the pH starts to rise or become less acidic in the stomach, the mucus layer that protects your stomach tissue from being damaged by your stomach acid starts to wear down and get thinner. And so that if you have a low pH in your stomach, that's ideal, but when it starts to raise and you're not producing as much stomach acid as you should be, that layer of mucus starts to wear down, and that has a negative impact on your body's ability to digest and also not to have stomach pain. It also changes the ability of your body to absorb nutrients like calcium, iron, and other minerals that you get through your food. So stress has a hugely negative impact on those areas of your body. And when your adrenals are stressed, when we see electrolyte levels that are off, and we know that we can see like stomach pH is off, then we're going to signs that your stomach pH is off, then we're going to see that that part of your brain that deals with stress, the hypothalamus to the pituitary to your adrenal glands, we know that there's going to be a lot of activity in that area. And that's going to disrupt your body's ability to manage thyroid hormone output, because the hypothalamus, pituitary parts of your brain, they also send signals to your thyroid to initiate production of thyroid hormone. So putting this all together, if you look at thyroid symptoms and you look at adrenal symptoms or symptoms from high stress, they're very similar. Hair loss, fatigue, loss of energy, weight gain, decreased sex drive or libido, all of those things are very similar. So how do you distinguish between thyroid and adrenal symptoms? Well, you've got to look in between the lines. You may have both at the same time, which is very common for people who have thyroid conditions. So it's important that you look at these markers on your lab test to identify if you think there might be some part of the adrenal component to why you have these symptoms, because that can explain whether or not going away with a thyroid hormone medication. So pay attention to what I just mentioned and look it over. Make sure that this does not apply to you, or that it does. If it does, then how do you fix it? So you need to figure out what the things are that are stressing your body. The two most stressful things are going to be abnormal blood sugar and abnormal ability to carry oxygen or anemia. So you need to make sure that you watch those deal breaker videos on blood sugar and the deal breaker videos on anemia, so that you can identify if those are patterns related to you, because those are more stressful than your car payments, having debt or anything else like that. Your number one physiological stressors are going to be blood sugar and the ability to carry oxygen. If you smoke, if you drink too much, all of those things can have a negative impact on those systems that are supposed to be providing energy and fuel for your body. So pay attention to those things. You've got to reduce and minimize stress. If you have stress that you can't change the ones that you can first, and then start working on those. Sometimes you can find a little bit of salt will actually, if it makes you feel good, then that's also one of those things that kind of tells you that it's likely that there's some component of adrenal stress that's not being managed appropriately, that you're not pulling your other stresses down enough, and then that salt makes you feel good. That also is kind of an indicator that there may be an issue with the health or the ability of your body to adapt to the stress around it, which is impacting your adrenal glands. I hope this information helps you figure out what to do. If you'd like to see the chart that I showed you in this video, it's on my website for my book. The book is called The Path to Health, a Manual for Proper Care of the Human Body, and the website is myhealthmanual.com. If you go to the Tools and Resources section and then click on Functional Lab Analysis, then you'll see this chart, and you can pretty much use it as a reference to go over your lab work and use the information that I gave you in this video to expand on that. I'm Dr. Richard L. Robles, and I hope this information helps you get on your path to health. Thank you.